Hello, my fellow fallible humans. Welcome to the Red Roof Recovery Show. This is a program to soften the path of recovery from substance and behavioral addictions. My name is Tanya McIntyre. I've been in recovery myself since 2009, and I have managed to abstain from my drug and alcohol addictions for 4 years now, since 2018, depending on when you're watching this. We're recording this in 2022. So I just recently celebrated 4 consecutive years of abstinence. So there's something to be said about what I'm practicing is something called SMART, Self-Management and Recovery Training. And it was founded in 1994 in Mentor, Ohio. It's growing exponentially. It's a secular evidence-based program for addiction recovery and no discrimination. All addictions are welcome. An addiction is an addiction is an addiction. I am joined today by my fantastic husband, Lancelot, Sir Lancelot, I call him. Lance and I have been married for 31 years, and I give him all the credit.
I don't think so.
Thank you for sticking by me for 20 of those years when I was mired in drug and alcohol addictions, and you stuck with me. So I am truly grateful for that.
Well, if I didn't think I was getting something out of it, I wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. So even while you were mired in your addictions, there was still something that I saw in you that was worth sticking around for.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad. Because, you know, the unconditional self-acceptance has taken me many, many years to reach. And it's something I work on every day, as you know. Not only have you lived with me through my addictions, now you're living through my recovery, which is...
Two totally different challenges.
Absolutely. Yes. Reaching a point of unconditional acceptance around myself, others, and life. I often say that has been the bedrock of my foundation, my solid foundation. My path is a lot smoother with those unconditional acceptance pieces of myself, others, and life. Absolutely, positively. If you go to YouTube, which is now the second most watched medium in the world, and you can look for Smart Recovery tips and tools for recovery that works videos, and you'll see those 3 acceptance pieces there: unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, unconditional life acceptance. And I've also bookmarked them, just those acceptance pieces, along with the hula hoop tool from Smart. I've made a playlist on my YouTube channel as well, so I can have quick access just to those acceptance pieces because I watch them on a regular basis. For me, the difference between feeling better, which is, you know, spontaneous, it's a fleeting thing, it flux and flow. Feeling better and getting better, 2 different things. Getting better for me happens when I systematically apply and reapply the tools that I have found to work for me. And it's taken me a long time to find those tools. The acceptance pieces around myself, others, and life is definitely an integral part of my sustained recovery. So I have those as a playlist. It's an acceptance playlist on my YouTube channel. If you do a search for Red Roof Recovery, you might come up with it, although I don't have my vanity URL because I think you need 100 subscribers for that. So if you can find me on YouTube, please subscribe so I can get my URL, my personalized URL for Red Roof Recovery. So sweetheart, today we are talking about, you know, we do harp on acceptance a lot, but you wanted to talk to, because you're bringing a family perspective into this recovery journey, which people truly appreciate, because for every one person who is suffering with an addiction, there are 5 family members who are also affected. So people love listening to you and your experiences.
So what I would like to talk about is, as we know, during your recovery, you've faltered on many occasions. Mm-hmm. And from my point of view, what I wonder about is this romantic, nostalgic recollection that you have about when you were drinking. Now, the analogy I use is when we have children, we tell them, don't touch the stove, it's hot. But as we all know, as we were kids once as well, you will touch it at some point and you'll go, ouch, that hurts. Now, we don't go 5 years down the road and go, I really miss that hot touch of that thing. I wonder if it's still the same thing. We don't do that. But in your recovery, you've shared the fact with me and people on the thing that when you were in your addiction, it wasn't pleasant. You felt terrible every day. You woke up, and if you weren't sick physically, you just felt physically drained. You didn't start to function until the afternoon when you'd had a couple of drinks. And then by the evening time, you can't remember anything anyway. So when you first come into your recovery, you realize that it wasn't pleasant anymore. You weren't getting any enjoyment out of it. You weren't feeling good, and you feel good that you've been able to abstain. And then a year or so, 2 years, 5 years later, you go, I really missed that. Now, I don't understand what you missed. And I'm wondering if you could explain where that thought process comes from and what you can do about to stop that thought process. You seem to have managed it for 4 years. You don't tend to have the urges and at the moment, nostalgic recollection. So where does it come from, and how did you manage to stop it? 2 questions.
Good questions too. Where does it come from? Well, if we knew that, we'd be able to solve the epidemic of addiction. I think it's a pandemic, actually, especially after the pandemic that we've lived through for almost 3 years now. Addiction rates.
What's the rationale from your perspective as someone who was addicted, gave it up, and then went back to it because of this recollection? What do you tell yourself to get to that point where you take another drink or you take another hit of something?
I tell myself that it's going to be different this time. So in 12-step programs, we talk about the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is what we do when we lapse or relapse. So when I came to Smart Recovery, a few things kind of clicked for me. So SMART is based on cognitive therapies, and cognition is thought. So the premise being with cognitive therapies that if we can change how we think, we will change how we feel. And that was a revolutionary concept for me, I think, because I was using drugs and alcohol to either increase pleasure or decrease pain, often both. And I was incapable of managing my emotions. It's just, whether it was from childhood trauma or not maturing at, an emotional level, not sure, but it was an inability for me to manage emotions. It was easier for me to manage my emotions with drugs and alcohol. And what I'm learning more about addiction now is that chances are I was born with a deficiency in dopamine. A dopamine deficiency is probably how it starts with people who are biologically vulnerable to addiction. And then it's an inability to regulate healthy levels of dopamine. So, the jury is still out on that. There's so very little known around addiction. All that we do know is that it's a complex condition. It's a chronic illness. It's a mental health disorder, absolutely. SMART doesn't take a position on whether or not it's a disease. They just say whether you believe it to be a disease or not. It doesn't matter what you believe. SMART has tools to help you. So I love the fact that, everything I need for my recovery is in here in the SMART Recovery Handbook. It's less than 100 pages, and it outlines a program of recovery. Not unlike 12-step programs, that's the program of recovery. That's the model of recovery with 12 steps. It's 12 steps of recovery. SMART takes a 4-point approach to recovery, that you need to learn how to build and maintain your motivation to abstain. So SMART is an abstinence-oriented program, but they say we'll meet you where you are and help you get to where you want to go, but you need to know where you want to go. And then the second part is where a lot of us falter, is managing the urges, learning to deal with the urges. So it starts with craving, right? It's a thought pattern. Craving, it starts with a thought pattern of cravings, and then those cravings can develop into the physical manifestation of the urge. And depending on what the addiction is and how you process your addiction, what your metabolism does with the addiction, there's all sorts of variables. We hear about people who are addicted to, heavier chemicals, that they go into a zone where their life depends on getting their next hit. We hear stories of them stealing from their grandmothers and stuff. And there's no question that our prisons are full of people who are there from addiction, without question. So I know, I'm not answering your question, am I? No.
Yeah, you've told me how the strategies go, but you've told me on several occasions, and what I've learned from other people is, over time, the urges and you learn to manage the triggers and the urges and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a significant amount of people still get this nostalgic thing where they go, in some, like I say, year, 2 years, 10 years, where they turn around and they go, that stuff that you used to make me feel like really, really bad, I think I want to try it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that normally comes from circumstances or situations and not doing the work of whatever program you're following. So the third point of SMART recovery. So number 1, you build and maintain motivation. Number 2, you learn how to deal with urges. Number 3, you learn how to manage your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, because thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are all connected. I think it actually starts with our language as well, but it's the managing of the thoughts, right? So we humans have this negative default to go to this mindset of negativity. We look at the negative side of things. That's our negative default. It's just a negative narrative that goes in a loop in our head, and it keeps rerunning the stuff from the past. It's just a memory. Our brain is a memory bank of the past, and it just keeps regurgitating it on a loop. And in cognitive therapies, what I've learned to do by systematically applying and reapplying the tools that I have found to work for me is that I'm now creating new neural networks so that my brain now automatically defaults to a less irrational frame of mind, a more rational frame of mind. So now my default is more rational. And I think I credit that to the cognitive therapies that I've learned through SMART and doing the work, showing up. I'm immersed in the work because it's my vocation now as well, which is helpful. So I think doing the work, systematically applying and reapplying these tools that I've found to work for me is crucial. That's I think where the rubber hits the road. You've got to make sure you're doing something every day to maintain that motivation, so you don't succumb to the romantic recollections that this time it will be different.
So let's talk about prior to you finding SMART. Did relapse. Was it that you got to a point and you just thought, well, I'm cured? Or was it there were triggers that you couldn't handle? And
I think, yeah.
And you thought, well, this used to numb me and I want to numb this, so I'll use that again. Or was it the fact that I beat this and I'm not feeling that good, but I can just do this for tonight to forget about it, and I'll just won't do it again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a combination? Is it one thing? What is that thought process from your point of view?
I think it's a complex process. It's different for everyone. For me, it was exactly that. First of all, it was my unwillingness to accept my condition. I never wanted to be considered abnormal, right? So we live in a society that has defined alcohol intake. Certainly, we were just talking about this earlier on a meeting today about how back in the 70s, we all used to smoke in our house. Right? You could go into a dining room and everybody be smoking if there'd be ashtrays on the table.
In the 90s.
Pardon?
Into the 90s.
Into the 90s, right? And it's just so absurd to think of that now because it was so normalized. And we, you know, if you watched anything on TV, people were smoking. And so that's pretty much our society now has decided that smoking is not good for us anymore. And even though they used to have doctors advertising it as being good for you. And, and now we're left with, you know, an equally poisonous substance, still legalized, still accepted as, you know, a normal part of consumption to socialize, and you know, where the messages are reinforced that it's a good way to unwind and relieve stress after work. We see it all the time. If you're watching movies, you know, people go out for a beer to celebrate. They're toasting at weddings. They're having wine with dinner. It's just something that's part of a normal society. So when you're unable to do those things, you feel flawed, abnormal. Who wants to feel flawed and abnormal? So for me, I kept telling myself that I could kick this. I can be cured. If I just abstain long enough, I'll be okay. Then I can go back to having a glass of wine with dinner. And, you know, as we say in 12 steps, how much evidence do you need? Everybody who would lapse and relapse in 12 steps, we'd say, oh, you went out looking for more evidence, right? We just laugh at each other. And you know, I still go to 12-step meetings because I love the peer support. The people are really beautiful in 12-step programs. And I love their slogans. I use them a lot. Take what you need and leave the rest. And we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to manage this stinking thinking. And cognitive therapy works for me. And in 12-step programs, when I would lapse and relapse, the reason I went looking for something else is because a lot of my peers in 12 steps weren't coming back from their lapses and relapses. And I knew it was just going to be a matter of time before I didn't.
Yeah, well, as we've spoken about, from the other point of view, from this side of the screen, when you say, yeah, I've got this romantic thing and I need this to sort this out, it's not very romantic from this point, this side of the screen.
I bet. No.
Like
to watch our loved ones going through that is excruciating, I'm sure. Yeah.
And this is where the whole mindset of not understanding, because we never saw, especially if your addiction got to a point where it was becoming very unmanageable, I could not see you getting any enjoyment from your addiction. All I saw was the pain. There never seemed to be any addiction, any joy, right? And I, you know, from my experience, when you were in your throes of your addiction, it could be embarrassing. There was a lot of, I think the worst part was when people used to give you a look of, they were sorry for you, that I'd have to be out with you because you were doing stuff, and I didn't have the tools to help you. Not realizing at the time that I couldn't help you. Yeah, that's my journey, getting to the point where the realization that didn't matter what I did. Like, it was your journey, and all I could do was be there if you needed me. You had to come to a realization that this wasn't sustainable. As you said, I'm going to kill this or it's going to kill me.
Mm-hmm. That's basically what it came down to.
Yeah.
And I know I've told you this several times, Lance. I'm just so sorry what you lived through with me.
No.
Being there. Thanks for sticking.
No, it's I mean, everything is a learning experience. Everything, even though it makes us feel not very good at times, and like what I am now is a combination of different experiences. And one of those experiences is being with you through these troubling times. When you were embroiled in your addiction, and I was looking for answers as much as you were.
Yes, sadly, there's not a lot of help out there for the family members and friends of people who are living with loved ones who are addicted.
No, again, this is just my perspective. The journey that the family member, the friend, goes on is one of, as you put it, acceptance.
Mm.
Accepting that we've got to look after ourselves, because your favorite airplane analogy, if I'm not in a good space, when you turn around and say, I need help, if I'm not in a good space, I can't help you. So the whole realization that I have to look after me. Now that sounds selfish. I know. To a lot of people that would sound selfish to say, well, I've got to exclude you from the thing because there's nothing I can do about you and I've got to work on me. But if you come to the realization that whatever I did wasn't going to stop you drinking. And I came to that realization that I tried everything. I tried being supportive. I tried giving you advice. I tried not threatening you, but cajoling you to stop, and nothing worked because you weren't ready. And once I came to that realization, there are only two things: work on myself, and accepting this is the situation, and I'm willing to stay in it, or leave.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to be, for me, that black and white.
Yeah.
And your cost benefit analysis that you love to do, that I used to do in my head, was always the calculation: if I leave, what do I lose?
Mm-hmm.
And is it worth the leaving?
Yeah.
And lucky enough, it always comes to the point that, hello, drinkers. It always it always fell on the side that favored us staying together.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to bring up the Buddha meme here. And it says there are 3 solutions to every problem: accept it, change it, or leave it. If you can't accept it, change it. If you can't change it, leave it. And that's very true. Look, like all the pictures that are on my laptop, for those watching the video, you can see on my laptop, all of my socialization was definitely around drinking, for sure.
Everyone's was.
Mm-hmm.
And the main part still is. I mean, we live now, we tend to mix in the company that doesn't drink, because that's where we are. But when we were drinking, I mean, they were all.
Oh, that's me.
All of our socialization was alcohol driven. As you said,
Mm-hmm.
Go to a christening, you have a drink. Go to a marriage, you have a drink. Go to a funeral, you have a drink. Get a new job, have a drink. Lose a job, have a drink.
Mm-hmm. So the acronym that is thrown around a lot in recovery meetings is FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. When we're looking at the cost benefit analysis, we're looking at what are the benefits of our addiction? What are the costs of our addiction? And then what are the benefits of not having our addiction and the costs of not having our addiction? And of course, the costs are the FOMO, fear of missing out. How do I live? How do I socialize without my addiction? Because that's, alcohol is called social lubricant for a reason. So getting to a point where you have to learn how to live a life again that creates new habits, new distractions, new beliefs, new mindsets, new thoughts. It's a relearning process, absolutely. And some people prefer to isolate around that, or especially early in recovery. I did too. I just avoided things where I felt I was going to be vulnerable. I just wouldn't go out to social functions.
I remember.
Mm-hmm. And then I decided I would take an accountability partner with me. So there's other things that you can learn how to do in life. For me now, I don't even think about drinking and drugging anymore. And I'm so grateful, because for 8 years in 12-step meetings, that's all I thought about was the deprivation I was feeling for not having my drugs and alcohol.
You've never been this immersed in recovery, though.
This is true. I think you've got to do something every day. It doesn't, recovery doesn't take a long time. It takes a persistent willingness to exert consistent efforts to help yourself. And for me, doing this now as a vocation, I think for sure is a contributing factor, and doing the work every day. So I spend, at the very least, 10 minutes on my self-care during the day with affirmations and unconditional self-acceptance, self-love. I still do the mirror exercise from Louise Hay, rest her soul. The hardest thing we do in a lifetime is learn how to love ourselves, because it's beaten out of us from the time we're born. So I do look in the mirror and say, I love you. I really, really love you. And you're worth it. You're worth the effort. Took me a long time to get there.
Oh, I'm glad you're there.
Mm-hmm. I know you're not crazy about that whole mirror exercise.
I've never had a problem liking myself.
You need to write a book about that.
That might be something narcissistic. Maybe I've got different problems.
So I don't even think did I answer all your questions? I don't think I did.
Yeah.
We've only got a couple of minutes left.
I think that the upshot of it is we don't really know. We don't know what triggers the brain of the person with the addiction to think, it's a good idea that we go back and do this again. Mm-hmm. Try and get more evidence.
Yeah.
We don't know why it happens.
I think it's just retraining the brain. For me, it's just been retraining my brain to go into, now my default way of thinking is a rational way of thinking. And it took me a couple of years to get there, for sure. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Lancelot.
You're welcome.
Everything. I so love your contribution to the show. Thank you. And thank you for being here, contributing 30 minutes of your life to listen to us. Please check out my books. I've got 2 of them, Mindful Wisdom and Daily Wisdom from my philosopher dad. He was an extraordinary man who raised me as a single father while struggling with his own addictions. And you can get those on Amazon.ca. And if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone who would qualify for our unique 1-week recovery program, email me at redroofrecovery@gmail.com. There is great power in knowing that the only thing we can control in life is ourselves, right? It's great to feel that power. So let's start talking to ourselves like we talk to our best friends. May the force be with you. And remember, you are the force. Thanks for being here.